Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
Just making sure you guys can hear me. And Salome, is that how I pronounce your name?
Hi, Nisa. Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
I just wanted to make sure. I
Yeah.
can't really butcher Ben, but I know I can butcher your name just like people butcher my name. So I just wanted to make sure.
How do people say your name wrong?
Nissa,
Uh,
Nisa, they just get very complicated with it. I don't know why.
got it. Morning, everybody. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Thank you, Salome. So I think just double checking, I think that we agreed that everybody was going to do the intro right before their section when we started speaking. Is that right? And not right up front?
Yeah, I don't think we were doing the around the table, around the horn. I'm sorry.
Perfect. Just wanted to make sure
Morning.
my memory is not the same as it was when I was younger.
That's okay. I have to take DHA too. I said something is going on. I don't know what it is, but my brain is not working the way it used to.
It's not my usual apps here, and so I don't have the. I'm not going to try to figure out how to blur my background. I just figure everybody will be okay with it. It makes me. I'm sure all this stuff makes me look more. Looks like we can get started. All right. Good morning, everyone. We are happy and excited to be able to present to you. We're from West Monroe, and title of this is Making Space for Authenticity, exploring consulting as a person of color. And so we're going to be doing a few things in this presentation. We'll talk a little bit about West Monroe, who we are and how we work. And And then we have a group of distinguished colleagues here who will be able to talk more in depth about their experiences at West Monroe and as a consultant. And I'm sure that we'll get like a specific flavor on being a Black consultant in general. Um, and we have some tips, I think, for managing your career. And if we have some time at the very end, we'll be happy to answer any questions people have about consulting or West Monroe or whatever else comes to mind. So if we can jump to the next slide. This is the team that's going to be speaking to you today. I am actually really proud to be able to work with these guys. We'll have everybody as they're coming up on their part of the presentation. We'll have them do their introductions. I'll introduce myself now, and then we'll go through the rest of the presentation. So my name is Will Collins. I am a senior architect in our tech practice. I'm specifically tied to software engineering, and I'm based out of Seattle. I've been at West Monroe for about 4.5 years. I have experience. Most of my experience is as a pure software person. I've worked at a couple of big tech places. I've also done some consulting on my own. Like I said, I've been at West Monroe for 4.5 years. It's a lot of fun. I'll be able to sprinkle in, I think, as we go, some of the things that I like about West Monroe and what makes it unique. So I think we can go to the next slide. So here, this is just kind of a really high level view of who we are at West Monroe. As you can see, we're distributed all across the country. I'm going to make an unofficial plug for people who are interested in consulting at West Monroe to consider the Seattle office. All of the other offices are great. I'm not just saying that. In Seattle, we have just naturally not the same population of people of color that we do in some of our other cities that we're in. And so if anyone's thought about moving out west, or if you're already out west, when you're talking to our talent acquisition people over the next day or so, make sure you ask about the Seattle office. Or you can also reach out to me and I'll be happy to tell you about it as well. And so for people, that 1,500 number, it's hard for us to put that on a slide and keep it current because we've been growing so fast. But we are growing, right? And so I think it's been exciting just with the opportunities that we've had and the work that we're getting to do as an organization. It's been really fun to be a part of. The organization is 100% employee owned. And so, you know, I guess I just want to stress for that. And I think that people, anytime that you talk to people at West Monroe, this is real. And internally, there is this feeling that we are all here for each other. And I think that we do a great job. Is like if you invest in what we're up to here and in our people here, you will be rewarded. And it's just not, I think it's a different relationship than some places where you're just an employee and you do your best and you get rewarded as you go. I think it's really built into our fabric, right? The way that like we all work together and we kind of reap the rewards together. And so again, as you guys are talking to people about West Monroe, you should dig some more into that. I think that you'll see that it's for a lot of reasons, it's a great way to work at a company. We're known at West Monroe for the work that we do in our communities. And I mean, and that spans, we do a whole lot of like, traditional like charity work and things out in the community. But we also we're really committed to all of the communities that we're involved with, which includes our, people of color, right? And so like just this year, I've worked on pro bono projects where we have consulted for like women and minority and specifically Black owned businesses, right? Salome's worked with me on one of those as well. It's really, what's the word that I'm looking for? It's just really gratifying to be able to contribute to the community, and especially the communities that sometimes, honestly don't get a whole lot of attention. And so at West Monroe, we say that that's important. And I think that we've done a really good job of showing people that like we can back up the talk that we're doing. Global reach, but geographically close. As you can see, like I said, we're spread across the nation. We have a partner in Europe, Bearing Point. Most of our work certainly is here in the United States, but we do have lots of projects that have touched over to other parts of the world. I personally worked on one project since I've been here outside of the country in Sweden. It was actually a lot of fun. And so we're not guaranteeing people a whole lot of geographical, like worldwide travel, right? But some of that stuff is possible. What's more likely though, is that you'll get to work on projects that touch people or organizations, throughout the world. We can jump to the next slide. And so this talks a little bit about, as specifically a technical person at West Monroe, here are some of the areas that you can get involved with. And we'll talk a little bit more about this in a later slide. But that top little section there for industry expertise, right, is kind of what our thing is, right? We combine our technical expertise with our really deep knowledge and experience in these various industries, right? And I think it's what makes us different than a whole lot of consulting firms. And so the advisory stuff that we do, we have people involved with all those mergers and acquisitions is a great example. It's one that people can understand really well, right? And so it makes a great example. We have clients that are looking to purchase companies or manage an acquisition or whatever, right? And so we have people who go in there and we do technical due diligence. We help with strategy. There's just a lot of advisory work that we do there. It's really interesting, and that's just one slice of what we do with our technical people. In the spotted piece, we talked just a little bit about like specifically some of the technical stuff that we do. Like I said, I'm a software engineering person, but by nature of that, our work, we cross over into a lot of these things, cloud systems and platforms. I do a lot of work there. Analytics and AI. We have a bunch of people that I work with specifically on my teams. That's their thing. Digital strategy. Strategy is a really big one for us that we're focusing on. And so again, as you're learning about West Monroe, we'll be happy to give you like lots more details about that. So next slide, if we would. And so now we're going to talk a little bit about why we're here. And this next slide, I think, will start to illustrate this. And this is probably not news to anybody who's actually at this presentation, because you've probably seen and lived this in the places where you've worked before. And so if we look at, specifically, let's look at Black, right? 14.4% in all industries for industry participation. That number drops down like in half for tech. And this is something that you can see and feel, right? Like anywhere where you go, I think, in general out in the world, right? There's just not a whole lot of representation for people who look like us. And there's a whole bunch of reasons for that. And I think that there's a lot of talk about how we change that, right? But West Monroe, in participating in events like this, and with some specific things that we're doing around hiring and developing and work in the community, is we're actually working, really hard to change that, starting with ourselves. We can go to the next slide. And I kind of jumped ahead just a little bit, but how do we improve those stats, right? And so this next slide this is more about how West Monroe works. And this intersection of tech and business, I want to touch on this point for like a couple of different reasons, right? In software engineering specifically, as an example where I work, like I do interviews for people on campus, I do experienced hire interviews, and we talk to really talented people, and they're like, okay, why should I, as a technology person, come work at West Monroe as opposed to going to work at like Google or Apple or whatever, right? Those seem like, sexier places to work. And they're great places to work, right? I've worked at Microsoft. I worked at a few other places. They can be a great place to work. Working in consulting is different, though. It's like there really is this intersection between tech and business. And so we're not here specifically at West Monroe to solve technical problems. We're here to help our clients solve business problems. And so as a tech person here at West Monroe, you get exposed to our clients, like what they do and like how they make money and how they make a difference, is something that you don't always get if you're just a tech guy, right? I say just a tech guy, but you guys know what I mean, right? It's there's this experience that you get that you can see the difference that you're able to make, and in your career, it gives you options that you might not have if you're just working in a specific industry or if you're just working with specific technology, right? It really gives you a mix of things to do where you can go out and make a bigger difference in the world if that's what you're up to, right? And I think for me personally, what I really am up to here is to have more Black people who, get to say how things go in the business world, right? More CEOs, more directors, more general managers, more owners, startup owners, right? And one of the ways that you can do that is by developing a set of skills that's wide enough that's going to allow you to be successful in those endeavors. And I think that this particular diagram shows one path to that, that allows people to be more successful than they might be in some other situations. Jump to the next slide. And so this last one is, how do we show up authentically? This is something that we've asked our consultants, and we get, there's a whole bunch of things that come back here, and I'm not going to read all of these on the slide, but I am going to just touch on a couple of them, because we walk into all kinds of different scenarios as a consultant, right? And our clients expect us to be experts, right? That's why they're hiring us. But we're not always experts in everything that we do, right? We learn on the fly. We apply our past expertise, but there's always this combination of it, right? And so that very bottom bullet on the left side, like being able to say, I don't know, like powerfully saying, I don't know, is an important skill for being a consultant, right? So it doesn't mean that you say, okay, I don't know, and then you walk away, right? But I think the point of this is that you don't have to be an expert in everything to be a great consultant. And I think bringing that mindset in gives people some freedom and there's another bullet over here about taking risks and being okay with failure, right? Consulting, I think, intimidates a lot of people, again, because of the wide range of things that we have to work on. There's tough problems to solve. And a lot of times there are people, I don't know if that's for me, right? I'm afraid I won't be successful. I'm afraid my network is not big enough, or I won't be able to build it, or I won't be able to figure out the answers or whatever, right? And so what we're here to tell you, among other things, is that it's okay to take risks and fail once in a while, right? I know everyone's heard some version of this before, but if you never fail at all, maybe the challenges that you're taking on aren't big enough. Right? And so again, I know like our panel here, they're going to be able to speak on some more of these things. But we work really hard, and we're continuing to work really hard for people to be able to show up exactly as they are and feel included and be successful. And it sounds really simple, but it's not something that happens everywhere. And so we're really proud of that here. And like I said, I think you'll hear some more about it as we go through the rest of the deck here.
All righty. So thank you, Will. So now we're going to get into those tips that Will mentioned earlier today. So the first tip that we have is to prepare. So what do you do when you want to become a consultant? So there's 3 steps. you need to think about what your ideal role will look like. Update your resume and LinkedIn to reflect your accomplishments and engage with those in your network. Again, these are just basic tips that most of us know, but I think the biggest one for me that stands out is ideal role. Don't settle. Know exactly what you're looking for and then go for that role. If you want to go to the next slide, then. Yep, so reflect, redo, and reach out. So now I'm going to introduce one of my colleagues so that way they can give their personal anecdote of how they entered into the consulting world. All right, so Salome, a couple of questions for you, dear. Why consulting? And then did you have any hesitancy about how you would be received as a person of color in the workspace or with clients? And then lastly, how did you overcome that way of thinking?
Thanks, Nisa. Yes, definitely. For like why I decided on consulting. To be perfectly honest, I didn't actually start thinking about consulting until about my senior year. But after starting to like hear about it and realizing about how diverse the work would be in terms of the different projects you could get on, I realized that it would be an opportunity for me to learn as much as I could in a shorter amount of time than I would have at, say, if I was just working in industry. And it's definitely something that I've seen come to fruition in terms of just how much I've learned over the past 2 years at West Monroe. In terms of my hesitancy about how I would be received as a POC, I definitely did have those hesitations. And it was coupled with me being a POC in a space like consulting, which is majority white. And it was also, I guess, to do with the fact that I was going to be moving to the Midwest, which was also not familiar to me. So it was a combination of things, but that all contributed to me having some sort of I guess, confidence issues in what I thought I was capable of. And how I overcame that, it was a mixture of first connecting with advisors that I knew I could trust. I think people call it your personal board of advisors, just people you can talk to about your growth and the goals that you have for yourself, just kind of taking charge of your career. Another very important thing was just focusing on my achievements and like not getting stressed out about comparing myself to my peers, objectively looking at the things that I achieved and realizing that regardless of what I looked like or what my background was, I had achieved all these things and therefore I deserve to be here. And then also just setting very specific goals that I could actually measure. I know it's good to have goals that are also like non-tangible, but goals that you can actually track and say that I did this amount of this and therefore I'm ready for this next step. It was just a way for me to continue to take control of my career and also kind of have more informed conversations with my personal board of advisors. And then the kind of last point on there as well was just to also find a way to get involved outside of my client work. It was just a way to be able to connect to other people at West Monroe that may not necessarily be part of my day-to-day, which was just part of finding that space to continue to belong, even though I'd already been on that path. So through our employee resource groups, the Women's Leadership Network, the Black Employee Network, now we WM Pride. It was just a way to continue to find those bubbles, those spaces that celebrate your authenticity every day, celebrate that individuality, how different you are from everyone else. And it's just how I've continued to just think about things as I continue to try to fit in and find my own space.
All righty. All right. Thank you, Salome, for that, especially the piece where you mentioned you deserve to be here because you do. And I appreciate being able to work with you. So next up, we have interviewing. So find the right firm. So we included this slide because we wanted to really bring home that it's not just you interviewing for a job. you are also interviewing that company to make sure that that's a fit for you. So remember that you're valuable, that you have and also have like a dollar amount in mind, and then add to it. Because a lot of times we lowball ourselves to like, ooh, I don't know if if 65 an hour is too high or not. It's not. You can shoot higher than that. Go for 110. Look around your area. Look at compare the salaries for that role, maybe your experience that you have, the geography of where you'll be living to accommodate for cost of living, and then shoot for that number. You can go ahead to the next slide, Ben. And so you also want to consider the firm culture. So again, you're interviewing them. What size of the firm would be the best fit for you? Do you like a large company or a smaller one? What does leadership look like? Is it diverse? Do they have any employee resource groups available, or ERGs? And then double check their social media, LinkedIn, Glassdoor, see what people are saying about them. Next one, please, Ben. And then before you accept an offer, make sure that company's values align with yours. What does a career path look like? Again, going back to what Salome mentioned, know what your goals are. So if you know in 3 years you want to be in a certain spot, then make sure that company can help you get there. Work-life balance, is, if anything, 2020 taught us with work-life balance. You need to be able to have that flexibility to be a family member, but also be an employee. And then again, compensation transparency. There is nothing like signing an offer letter and then realizing that it is not all it's cracked up to be. So a quote we'll leave you with really quick is, if you want to feel inspired, challenged, fulfilled, and happy with your work and with the people you work with, you must first find the company that you love working for. Next one, please, Ben. So now we'll hear from another one of my esteemed colleagues. You can go to the next one. So this is Mr. Ben McKenzie. Hey, Ben.
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good. So a couple of questions for you, sir. Knowing the data surrounding pay disparity, how did you personally prepare for salary discussions? And then also, how did the total compensation package transparency impact your decision to choose West Monroe?
All right. So just quick introduction. Myself, Ben McKenzie. I am a senior consultant in our cloud infrastructure practice. I've been working in technology for about 8 years now. And to answer your question, so as Blacks, like, I think the latest figures is like 30%. We're making about 30% less than our white counterparts. And so, like, I mean, it's 2021 and we're still at this point. And some of the best pieces I got in my career was really was when I was negotiating my salary for my first job. And so, like, at that point, I had no idea where to start from. And like at that age, especially, if you have no starting point, you don't even know where the basis or ground is. And so the hiring manager, who was Black, he told me that what I'm paid today like has no correlation to the market rate of what I should be paid. So, at the time of the college student, I was making $0. I didn't know how to equate that. But now looking back, it makes sense. So, like, we shouldn't try to sell our homes like at the price we paid for them. So we shouldn't take that same approach like with our compensation as well. So I started looking up like what other senior consultants were making, and really at other firms, of course. And so I got a large range. But what also helped was like social media platforms like LinkedIn as well as Fishbowl, where people can like anonymously share their salary. So where they're free to just share what that compensation looks like. And so from there, I narrowed down that range to figure out what I'm really comfortable with, but not factoring in like the bonuses, sign on, all the other benefits and frills. I'm not saying that's important, but that can change any time because it's variable. And so I want to make sure that, what that base salary is, something that I'm comfortable with if that happens to all go away. And so I use that as a starting range to kick that conversation off. And then, once you get that offer, like, you should never just accept it immediately. You should take that back, internalize it, share that with your partner, your family, your friends, and not family and friends, but your partner at least, just to make sure that that's something that as a family or a unit that will be that's something you can work with. But through that, I also had to remember that, you at any point you have to be comfortable to walk away, especially if you're not getting the rate that you deserve, or that you deserve based off of what that market skill set is. So if they're coming in like below and it's not meeting those expectations, it's okay to leave the conversation. And that's something that I've had to do before, but if you don't, you're doing a disservice to those behind us and that especially look like us.
Yeah.
But I mean, having that information, and for example, with the total compensation, most firms that I work for have given that, but Western Rail was the first that have given that up front. And so that allowed me to put a value on what those additional benefits are. So like for myself, like the flexible time off and things like that, knowing that, those are valuable to me and this is what it's going to be worth over my career. In our community, we like to think of salary conversations as uncomfortable, but if we just go in with facts, it's really just the conversation of, this is what it is.
That's right. I mean, you're making a personal choice of where you want to be, but you're also making a business decision. And so you should never like undervalue yourself to the point where you're like, well, I mean, I guess it's fair. So definitely, like you said, do your research and make sure it's a number that you're comfortable with on the base, because you're right. Those, the bonuses may not come. Maybe you didn't have a great year, but that salary should be where your focus is. Well, one of your areas of focus. Alrighty. Next slide, Ben. All right. So thrive. So you've prepared for the job. You've decided you want to work somewhere, and now you're there and you want to grow your career. What are a couple of things you can do to kind of help that come to fruition? Next slide. So be the CEO of your career. So I don't know if anyone was tuned in earlier to one of the previous speakers, but she talked about your brand, and this is exactly the same thing. So you be the CEO of your own career. You create your own board of advisors. So seek people in your circle that can help you grow not only personally but also professionally. So you want to identify people who challenge you and help you grow. So whether it's reading articles or taking certification courses or just shadowing someone that's maybe in a higher role than you, make sure you're doing the work to get where you want to be. Be clear about what you want and how they can help you. So don't just choose someone that you just met that makes sure that is a nice person. Make sure that you have a plan in place of how they can help you. What are the things, set your expectations. So what is it that you're looking for from them as far as their mentorship? And then create a plan to work in a manner that works best for you. So whether it's like checking in once a month or every couple of weeks, check and make sure that the plan that you put in place is something that works for you and your advisor. So that way you'll be the most successful person you can be. Next slide. So some ways you can pay it forward. Like Ben mentioned, when you take a job at a firm and you choose a salary, whether you know it or not, you're also setting the bar for whoever comes in after you that looks like you. So when you do get that job and you are paid a fair wage that is comparable to the colleagues that may not look like you, pay it forward, attend career fairs, participate in ERGs, share your stories just like my colleagues did today, mentor a young and upcoming professional so they know that there's people out there that look like them in this industry that are thriving. And then work with your inclusivity and diversity team to increase HBCU presence. So there's a research that has been done that there's tremendous talent at HBCUs is being overlooked. And so make it a purpose to go out there and talk to the Howards and the Spelmans of the world to make sure that they know there's a place for them wherever you are or within this industry. Next, please. All right, so now we're going to hear from William Coggins, another colleague of mine, to kind of share about his personal experience. Next one, Ben. So, William, how important is it for you to work at a place that encourages but celebrates you being your authentic self?
Thanks for the question. So I'd say it's pretty critically important to me. So for context, before coming to West Monroe, I worked specifically in tech. So, something that goes along with tech companies is a very laissez-faire, dress how you want. You could wear pajamas to work if you want. And, you can have your hair messed if you want, so long as you get your work done in the office, essentially. So being in that type of environment, I really learned how to appreciate being myself despite whatever sort of office policies that were in place. So when I was looking for a job specifically within consulting, I wanted to look for a type of place that would allow me to express myself for who I was. And when I was shopping around, some firms and some places said, you've got an interesting hairstyle, right? Meaning, if you're going to be meeting with consultants or meeting with clients or dealing with more higher ups, it better be chopped down, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think what was best about my experience interviewing with West Monroe was that it wasn't even acknowledged, right? So they saw me as the individual who I was and the qualifications that I produced and the type of quality of work that I also produced, and use that as the metric for judging me. And that's why I felt most comfortable, and that's why I eventually chose West Monroe. So that sort of expression of self helps not only make me feel comfortable in that space, but it also directly contributes to the type of work that I do. Meaning, if I feel that I'm being, I don't want to say policed or censored, but if I feel the extent where I'm, uncomfortable with who I am at work, I won't feel as comfortable being able to express ideas that might not be quote unquote safe to express, right? And that's a sort of critical thing that you need to do in the type of role that you are as a consultant, because if you're trying to fix things up, sometimes you got to rip off the band-aid, right? You got to tell them like, hey, this ain't working out.
Yep.
So having that capacity diminished through your own personal identity becomes a factor in how you can have a reduced performance overall. So, yeah, I go as far as to say it's very important to me.
Yeah. No, I mean, and that everything you said resonates with me. I had a couple of friends of mine. We're all product owners, which I never introduced myself, but I'm Nisa. I'm a product owner, so I'm that bridge between tech and business. And we discussed when she was looking for jobs, she was like, I want to get braids, but should I get braids? And I was like, girl, get your braids. Because if they don't want to hire you because you have braids, then that's not a place you want to be anyway. And so I feel like uh, it's a bare minimum, but almost also like um, a very exciting place to be when you can be your authentic self and say, this is who I am. All my credentials line up, and you're going to take these braids or natural hair or purple hair, blue hair, whatever you decide to look like does not necessarily affect how you will be as a consultant. So thank you for that. And just for the record, Will, your hair always gives me life. Every time I see it on Zoom, I'm like, yes, thank you, Will.
Thank you.
All right, next slide then. All right, so do we have any questions? I've been kind of looking at the chat as we've been going through. So Stacy, I just wanted to say hugs to you, sis, for understanding and unfortunately being in that position where someone is trying to offer you a low ball number, but knowing that you're worth more, so not accepting it. So I just want to give you a little shout out there. Any other questions? I'm scrolling the chat just to make sure. Caroline, yes, we would love to have you. I'm glad, Caroline, not Caroline. Glad that you put the chat in there for some interns. So hopefully we'll be seeing some of you individuals soon. Let's see. Stacy has a question.
I can talk a little bit about from what Stacy said, and I agree, it can definitely be hard. And so, if you're looking to work for another company, like a West Monroe per se, right? Like the best companies use their their reputation and their expertise, and they implicitly kind of bestow that on all of their people, right? And so, like when I go to a client from West Monroe, right, it's like this is not this guy who works from West Monroe who I need to figure out if he's going to be able to get the work done or not, right? The way that I'm presented as West Monroe is like, this is West Monroe. And there's a certain standard that we deliver on all the time, and you can expect that from us, right? And so you should really look for companies, I know easier said than done, right? But that will make sure that there's no qualification in how you're presented, right? You are them. And it makes a huge difference.
Awesome. I do have a question in the Q&A from Alex Bernadine. So what different advice might you give for becoming a consultant 10, 20 years into a tech career, or would you come early on?
I guess the early on. So I was new to consulting. And one of the things that you walk into a consulting firm, one of the things you know is everybody speaks consultant talk. Everybody knows how to be consultant already, and you kind of feel already behind the curve. I would just say, make sure you find a firm, like example like West Monroe, who's making sure that, they understand that they're bringing people who have never consulted before. So somebody's going to be behind you or with you, showing you the ropes. You're not, in the trenches alone, a firm that you trust that you can grow with, and understand that, we want a non-consulting background because it brings a different perspective. And then I'll let one of my colleagues, who has been in the game a little bit longer, probably talk about the 10, 20 year.
I think Ben is already kind of referring to the old guy. That's me.
Oh, no. I didn't say that.
That's all right, though. It's, I guess the advice that I would give, there's a couple of them. And so Ben's points were great, right? I mean, there's basic consulting skills that you learn. And in tech, right, you want to kind of find your niche in tech, like where you want to hang your hat. And then as you go along, keep thinking about, make a distinction between the work that you do that is strategic versus the work that you're doing that is we all have to implement stuff, right? There's stuff that we have to do. And then there's also strategy that we need to deliver on that provides value for people, right? And so as you get more senior, you're expected to be able to wear both of those hats, be tactical and strategic at the same time. And then one other real quick thing about as you go on in your career is make sure that we talked about pay it forward, right? Find people to mentor, right? Have those people be successful. And the really happy part of that is by extension, it makes you more successful, right? So whether you feel like for whatever reason you mentor people, right? Even if you didn't like people, you should mentor people because it will make you more successful as well. I know there aren't that many people in that boat, right? But that's like a really strong piece of advice that I have.
Okay. And last thing that was in the Q&A, will West Monroe be at the career fair tomorrow? And yes, we definitely will be at the career fair tomorrow from 2 to 5. Let's see, when will the replay recordings of this main stage session be available? Let me check and I'll try to get that answer for you, Emmanuel. Let's see. Given your learnings about gaps in the recruiting interviewing process, do you have any ideas for how we can evolve the recruiting process to fix any gaps that we've seen? My gut instinct to say, well, my gut reaction is to say network, because there are gaps in the recruiting process, but I do feel like sometimes it's who you know. I came onto West Monroe because a friend of mine, Kyla Pratt, they approached her and she was like, hey, I know someone else. And they were like, okay. And they reached out to me and here I am. So I do feel like building that network of advisors or friends or people within the industry can help bridge that gap until other companies catch up as far as making sure they're being intentional with trying to bring on diverse talent.
I like your use of the word intentional there. And so there's training that we go through, like as managers and in our employee resource groups, and then where we talk about unconscious bias. And I think for a lot of places, right, they're not intentionally exclusive of people of color. But there's not a whole lot of thought on, the assumptions that we make about people's background or like how they live or whatever, how those actually show up in how people interview, right? And so I think that's one of the places, and we have a bunch of people at West Monroe, and there's a bunch of people out in the industry who are looking really hard at that. But I think that that's going to continue to bear fruit as we go.
Okay, and I think we might have time for maybe one more. So Stacy wanted to know if we had any if we could share some strategies for finding clients as an independent consultant, building their own firm in a country that has a small Black population where white male consultants dominate the sector. Does anyone have any tips for Stacey?
That is a hard one. I've also done that, right? I spent some time as an independent consultant here, right, in the Seattle area. But you know, there aren't any magic answers here. I mean, you need to credential yourself, right? And so, like, if there's an area where you do your consulting, right, you need to show up in those community groups, those professional groups, and you need to go out and meet leaders. In addition to the people who do that work, you need to go out and really just network with people who manage or oversee or just pay attention to those industries, right? It's like those higher level contacts are the people who can refer you. And again, I know that that's hard. Independent consulting is hard. It can be really rewarding, but like I said, I apologize. I don't have a great answer there, but that's just kind of my perspective.
Okay, I think that's all the questions that we have. So thank you everyone for tuning in, listening to us share our stories. Hopefully you've taken some little tidbit or jewel from this to become your authentic self and find a place at a consultant firm. Shameless plug, hopefully West Monroe. So we'll be at the career fair tomorrow between 2 and 5. Come out, say hey, learn a little bit more about us, and connect with us on LinkedIn as well. So everyone have a great day.
Thank you all.
See ya.